Welcome to the second recap of the Wildcards pre-stream, right before we start streaming. Last time we covered 0 to 20, and now we're covering 21 to 37, which is probably like, what, guys? A year, maybe 2 years of our game?
It was a long time for sure. We weren't playing quite as consistently.
You might be wondering, who are these people? I'm Scott. I play Valentine on the Wildcards. The guy you just heard talking, who's that?
I'm Kyle Bryden. I'm the Dungeon Master to the Wildcards.
And we're so excited to be joined by another cast member of the Wildcards. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Ally. I am Elena Brawlin.
Last time you didn't say Brawly, and I think I was disappointed, so I'm happy you threw Brawly.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Yeah, that's good. Throughout this, we're going to be recapping our game before we got on stream. The cool part about our game is we started, Kyle, what level did we start on our actual YouTube channel?
On the actual YouTube channel, I think we started around level 10, but we started our campaign at level 3. So there's quite a long time, a gap from the beginning of campaign up to when we actually started putting it out for viewers.
So if you start watching from our episode 1 on this channel, yeah, we're around level 10, I think he's just said there.
10 or 11, yeah.
10 or 11. So here's what happened before then, how we got to there. Right now we're starting at session 21. We call them sessions, and then the ones on our channel episodes. And on this, our producer, Mary Lee in the background, just let us know that we are about level 6 here. The greatest part about this is, Ally, you joined our party during these sessions, not right at the start of here, so we'll try and move through that quickly. But how did you feel when we approached you to join our crazy DnD little campaign? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was so excited. I hadn't played D&D in years. It had been at least 5 or 6 years since I had last played with just a group of friends. So when I was invited, I was really excited. Of course, I knew you guys all from the place that we used to work at before. And I was very comfortable with you guys. I had fun chats with you guys, and I was really excited. Yeah, so it wasn't at all daunting for me. I thought, oh no, I hope I don't like screw anything up. And I was a little bit nervous, but honestly, like once I got into it, it was so easy, so much fun. And the story is just so great that it was so easy for me to jump in.
You fit in so seamlessly. And we're going to do another video about jumping into a campaign midway through if you're the new party member, of course, with Ally, because she's got the expertise in that. But then also how the DM and how a player like me who is in the party can help welcome them and make sure that they're incorporated in the game. I will say, just a funny aside we were joking about is I feel like the person you knew the best before joining the game was Brock, who plays Gord on our channel. Yet Gord actively has no love for you in this game. No hate, no love, just indifferent to you.
No, and like Brawly is borderline afraid of Gord. Like she can sense something is up. It's like some sort of evil. She can sense it, and she wants something to do with him. So anytime they're like, let's say, put together for a night watch or something,
it's always so great.
She's like, oh no, what now?
And in these sessions, in this recap video, which we're starting right now, I promise, we will learn a little bit of why Gord has that that fear element to him. So Kyle, we pick up in Arindale, as I recall, right? We're returning to Arindale after the fight with the Dragon Null.
Even after
you're right, I forgot about Rogue Point
actually, which
I try and black that part out, honestly.
I think most of us do, because your leave from Rogue Point was not so clean. You returned to Arindale, you found much safer shores, but you did learn that Rogue Point had gone up in flames, and there was a little bit of guilt in the fact that you guys kind of dipped and left it to its fate, more or less. But as you kind of made your way back to the capital city of Xander, very quickly you found yourselves in rather fancy company, and were invited along to this midsummer gala at Whitethorn Hall, kind of rubbing elbows with some of the nobles in Upper Arindale and the actual royalty of Whitethorn Hall themselves at this gala, which, just as a side note to anyone who is playing D&D or running D&D as a DM, put fancy gala parties in your game. They're super fun. Everybody has a great time.
We were invited by Prince Colton Delarian, who we met in our first recap video. He invited us to come along here. And Kyle, what I loved about what you did for this, another great DM advice is you forced us to go to this royal party, but no weapons were allowed. So we had to do kind of a skill challenge because, of course, the more roguish members of our party wanted to sneak in some daggers. Val snuck in Heartbreaker, his little sun sword, because it just looked like a hilt of a blade. He said, I don't know, he bullshit something. But then we attended this nice gala dinner, and of course, nothing bad's going to happen there. Before we get into
legitimately though, as like the pitch of it was just like, I was trying to play it super casual, like this is just a good RP session, just gonna be hanging out and meeting peeps. There definitely wasn't just that.
I will recap just some quick guests who are here who appear in our campaign before we get into what happens in the festivities of that night. We saw the Grey Lady, who we had last seen in Rogue Point. She welcomed us in. She's like a former adventurer, badass. We love her. We saw Valentine's brother, Rowan, who Val has kind of an estranged relationship with. And that kind of revealed to the party that Val had been lying about his last name. He actually comes from a more richer family from the south, the Fleurwilds. And Val's brother, Rowan, revealed that his sister, who Val really likes, Daisy, was getting married. And that was news to Val. Also some fun RP here because Hondo and Gord immediately started hazing Rowan, stealing from him. And that continues throughout our campaign.
Casual bullying. You know.
Casual bullying. Val was okay with it. Rowan's just an asshole, so he didn't really mind. We saw Baldora Redmane, who is Dwarven royalty. Plays a major part of our first Archon stream. This is where we say, by the way, if you are watching these right now and haven't watched our game, we're not going to spoil anything. We'll just touch on some stuff, but I promise no spoilers on this. And also there, like you mentioned, were the royal families, but also special dignitaries, Orcan dignitaries, as I recall, right?
Yeah, some Orcish, there's some relations between the people, the royal family, the Dalarians of Arindale, and kind of the Orcish tribes that kind of exist on the borders between Exander and Haverfeld. There had been long fighting and a particular war in which they were basically targeted by the former leader, Teravainen Dalarian. But as he passed in battle and his son took the throne, Malcolm Dalarian, the current king, he put an end to all of that. And though it has been a long time since that battle, those kind of like almost race relations are still rebuilding. There's a lot of trying to reconnect and bring them back into like the public perception as not monsters and horrible figures, as just people. So this was one of the kind of leaders of one of these tribes, one of the many tribes, was kind of a honored guest of Malcolm Dalarian. And unfortunately, as the dangerous side of a super fun gala happens, I introduce our next kind of big bad into this moment. And he is this leader of this group called the Blackthorns named Egoth Vansroy. And he's this massive, burly figure, towering over everyone. Though they entered the party through illusion, using like a seeming illusion. He has some skilled people on his team. And this Blackthorn group they're the worst types of people. They do not want to accept goblin
racist
and orcish people back into society. They are they're also anti-Dalarian just in general. But he opens up the party with like a big rousing kind of speech against the crown, and ultimately kills the Orcish dignitary, and almost like challenges Malcolm and calling for his head. And as this all kind of hits a boiling point, Wildcards jump in to try and protect everyone and save the day.
I'll speed through this. A pretty cool fight because, again, none of us are fully equipped because we're in like ceremonial clothes and stuff. I don't think Mary had her full weapons. So we start this fight. And Val's worried about Rowan. Like the prince at one point is like trying to really stick up for himself, but it's getting his ass handed to him. So a lot of cool like tension points during this fight. The big thing that happened in this fight to Gord is his beloved staff named Gerard. That could transform into a snake and attack things, perished I forget the circumstance of how. Was it Egoth? I know we blamed it on Hondo, and I would say
he definitely blames it on Hondo like all the time.
Yeah. It's
is there truth?
Blame it on Hondo, but it is not actually. It was Egoth Vansroy. Egoth has this kind of flaming blade that he cut this. It's a staff of the Python that Gord lovingly named Gerard. But as Egoth like killed Gerard in his snake form, it just kind of burned away. So it was Egoth who did the deed. But Hondo probably put him in a poor spot or something. It's probably Hondo's got some guilt in there somehow.
That may seem kind of innocuous, like just like a staff gets ruined. No, this takes a sinister turn in Gord, but we'll touch on that later. Fight spills out into the courtyard. We hear about a jailbreak. What is it, Kyle? A troll shows up in the courtyard. Pretty spooky, scary.
There was
something big,
some connection to some giant folk.
That was it.
And ultimately, the Blackthorns get away. As Scott mentioned, this kind of jailbreak happens. So there's some like extra of their retinue kind of making it out of the city. And ultimately, as the party kind of lets them go because you guys weren't fully equipped for this battle, and the Whitethorn like armies were like taken entirely by surprise. It kind of makes everyone look a little poorly, but essentially you guys were asked to meet with the small council, which was kind of an important moment in meeting some of the important figures of Arindale. You properly met Malcolm Delarian, the king, Lillian Delarian, the queen. You'd already met Colton Delarian, but you met his bodyguard as well as the kind of captain of the guard, Galdrin. This great
dude.
Just a classic kind of jock bro who I love playing.
We met Raymond here because he appeared in that fight, and he was again like great intro of like the Archmage throwing fire and crazy magic. So this is the Raymond introduction.
Yeah, and he serves as the headmaster of Whitethorn Hall as well as the arcane advisor to the king, and has done so for at this point 50 years or something to that effect. And so he is this kind of powerful figure, this powerful ally that you guys quickly kind of recognize, and he recognized that like you guys were going to be working together. Key important note, Hondo immediately did not like him. Just straight up didn't trust
this
him.
Guy's so nice. This guy's so nice to us. Hondo hates this guy. Does not trust him.
He was like giving you guys resources and items, and you were like doing a little bit of trade after this kind of council meeting in which you also met Alexander, not met Alexander for the first time, but found that Alexander's kind of day job was working with the crown as kind of in the King's Bay as this master of coin or master of the seas.
Alexander being kind of this relation from our first recap video with Mary has a contact to some shadier sides of Arindale.
Some shady stuff and a little bit of interest with Mary, but also has taken a very quick interest with the rest of you. But you get some interesting items from Raymond in this kind of exchange, including this interesting Dragon Guard book, some minor weapons, and some other things that you guys kind of argued and traded.
Ooh, and our earrings, I think here. We get the classic like message earrings to all talk to each other.
Totally stole from Critical Role, but it's a great idea.
Super convenient.
In exchange, though, from our first recap video as well, and from the first kind of session in Rogue Point, you gave up one of the gate gems that's right. It eluded you. This you tried to identify and understand its magic. Valentine specifically did, and it was incredibly powerful. It was far beyond anything you had understood. And so, with that in mind, you're like, well, I'll give it to this Archmage who seems to be super chill and friendly, and he gave you a bunch of stuff in return.
We were also tasked by the small council here. Hey, that Egoth asshole who showed up, track him down in the Blackthorns, find out what they're up to. This is not over. It seems like the start of something. So we were like, no problem. You got it.
We're adventurers. This is what we do. But to do that, Hondo brilliantly decided to travel through the mountains where they were kind of taking a refuge, where they believed them to be anyways. We need a guide. And who better than to find a Champions Guild member in one Alana Brawlin.
Dun, 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 dun. Alana, a little backstory about your character, what you were up to before this. What did you work up with Kyle?
Yeah, so essentially, I'm a Dwarven Fighter Cavalier. I am a member of the Champions Guild with two of my friends at this point, Gaz and Cal. We were childhood friends that grew up together in an orphanage in Hammerstock together, which is in Haverfell. And then as when we came to age, we trained and were really good in the rankings for the Champions Guild. So then when we were doing all our battles and stuff like that, we would make coin, needed more coin because there were some less battles in the areas, decided, you know what? Let's become guides. We know the area. We can have people hire us, make some good money. And then
Right along the way.
Right along the way. Yeah. So that's what we did. And then I guess you guys approached us and
well, but before we go further, there's another very important part of Alana's past that you need to bring up. Your sweet boy.
My sweet baby boy, Keith. He is a giant mountain goat. And he is basically my son as well. Adopted.
Your mount, your son.
My mount, my son, my baby.
Yeah. Your soulmate.
So that's part of why I'm also the Cavalier, because I use him in battles and stuff like that, especially initially. He comes with us.
Mm-hmm. And the Champions Guild are, a very generic fighters guild, a guild that is just like for the greater good, bring down monsters who are terrorizing small villages and such. And this chapter, before Ally had even been on the radar to join our game, I had this idea of having this Champions Guild chapter, this very early Champions Guild chapter beginning in Arindale, because it is such a Haverfell product, so to speak, that I was like, well, they'll branch out and they'll want to, and it'll be part of this kind of like race relations, starting to like, not race relations, but border relations, trying to rebuild these connections with some of the two provinces. And so before Ally had even joined us, that was my idea of like, I'll have this little group here. And then she immediately was just like, I'm in that.
Hello, I am this group.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So we're tasked to go to the Gauntlegrim range. That's where we get these whispers that's where the Blackthorns are hanging out. Along the way, one of those books that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kyle, but one of the books that Raymond gave us was this like Dragon Guard book, correct?
Yeah, it was an interesting book that was something that your NPC, my NPC cleric follower with you guys, Neavir, she'd been kind of pushing you guys to learn more about the Dragon Guard. It's been something that she was a personal quest to herself, and she didn't know much, but she knew that they were a historical kind of champions for good, and that was kind of the most that she knew. But they very much fallen out of most recorded history and most taught history, and wasn't widely known. So when between herself and yourselves got connected with Raymond as an archmage, it seemed like something absolutely this guy would have something on. So he provides this book that had a very small connection to the Dragon Guard, this kind of insignia on the cover, but all of its pages were blank. There was nothing to be done there. So when you guys kind of went off on your own, you didn't really immediately jump on it, but as you had begun this kind of trek and you like in resting and talking and hanging out, a little bit of investigation into this book was done, and ultimately was a little bit of experimentation to try and figure out how to get the information and how to connect with this book, and kind of
somehow we
everybody.
Yeah, somehow, honestly, this book is passed around trying to figure out who could figure it out. And someone, probably Gord, was like, we need to put our blood on it.
That's exactly
and we were like, all right. So then I know Val tried, and because we have it here, I put my hand on it with a little cut, and I got this vision immediately. And it was this like booming voice that was like, you've been chosen by another. Like you can't be a champion, or you can't read this book, whatever. Rejection, but also a great little breadcrumb from the DM that, you got some other stuff going on. Don't you worry.
Exactly.
So then I don't know if Gord tried and it was too sinister. Do you remember?
Gord
tried.
Gord tried.
Didn't have pure enough blood.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. Like he was almost like rejected, like fully, like he was pushed back from the book as like the entire antithesis of like his where he's coming from at this point and what this book is about. But it was Mary who ultimately was chosen to give it a shot, and kind of half-heartedly like, yeah, fuck it, I guess I'll try. Mary goes ahead and in this kind of semi-vision, semi-dream experience, meets with the Platinum Dragon Bahamut, and in a not like nothing binding necessarily, no contract or anything like that, but there is this kind of like chosen pact between the two of like, you have a good heart, I will aid you in what I can, I will try and help you if you help me to do good in the world. And through that you were granted information about this Dragon Guard, this ancient kind of order that was to do good in the world, to protect people and to protect the world from greater threats than average Joe. But to do that, you found in this book these ancient weapons empowered and made by the gods for the champions of said gods, known as the relics of the Fatesworn, entirely ripped off, vestiges of divergence. But I did make my several of my own homebrew weapons and armor and cool items and ideas. There's about a dozen or so of them. One of which it's about two or three that are more or less just fully taken from Critical Role. The rest are more or less my own or inspired from online that you see some pop up in game as we go along.
Yeah. But as some great things are happening, we're learning about some nice divine things. In the shadows, some evil lurks, and our pal Gord finds, what did we call this? A bloodstone? Something scary sounding.
A little blood gem.
Blood gem. Gord finds this blood gem. This is still Brawly's first game with us, Ally's first game. But through some like
travel through the mountains,
through some sinister stuff. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this here, Kyle, but Gord more or less makes a pact with someone else. He makes a pact with Orcus. Out of game, why don't you just tell him a little bit of why this happened?
So, yeah, very quickly, I think we're going to do a video on this if we haven't already. Brock out of game was just not loving what he was doing in game. He was already kind of a multi-class bard druid and simultaneously had so many things at his disposal, but none of the things he wanted.
It wasn't fun.
He just wasn't jiving so much. He liked the druid side, but didn't so much like the bard side. So I was like, well, using that, and also using his own inspiration by looking through the book, the monster manual, he saw a picture of Orcus and was like, that's fucking metal. Can I do something with that? And I was like, well, if you want to trade away your bard side and keep like you have that charisma casting, keep that, you could become a warlock in service to Orcus, the demon lord. And pretty much that was the bulk of the conversation. He was just like, this looks cool as hell, let's do it, without really diving into how dark and devilish and horrible that actually is. But he was all on board, and I was on board with like just throwing this little bit of chaos into the game was super fun. And yes, so in this quiet moment, as you guys have finished with this Dragon Guard book, he kind of slips away, has a meeting with a herald of Orcus named Caius, this worm that walks, this figure shrouded in shadow of just made
super
of worms, real bad, and makes a pact ultimately with Gord, but issues a challenge to go along with it to prove that he's actively worthy of Orcus's power. And as you guys are having this kind of quiet at the camp,
good night, everyone.
Woods, a demon knight erupts through this tree, and you guys fall into a near deadly battle.
Probably like one of our scariest battles at this point, where Val goes down, Mary goes down. When that knight goes down, he lets loose this like necrotic wave that literally kills Val and Mary. But through some item placement you had given us early on in like game 2, I forget what you called it, but it was more or less a gem of Revivify. And then Nearvir having a Revivify, quickly we were able to save both Val and Mary. I believe it was Leah's birthday at this time. For some reason, that's part of the story I've told myself, where Leah's character dies on her birthday, but she's okay. She's all right.
She's all right.
Also, thank you, Mary, Leah, for producing in the background. Gaz, Brawly, your orphan friend from childhood does not survive this fight.
No, basically one of my only family at that point and did not survive. So this being my first game, seeing my teammates go down and then a family member go down and die. Yeah, it was definitely intense, that's for sure.
But it helped. Yeah, it helped add to why you stayed with us.
Yes.
So it was great because we all justified it. We didn't justify, and this started a ongoing game outside of our game of, wow, Gord seems to be into some spooky stuff. Wonder what that's up to. Oh, well, shucks, he's so funny. Because we loved the idea of Gord has this secret and he's not revealing any of it to us. He didn't rush back and go like, sorry guys, kept this all a secret for basically all of our game. And we never wanted to pry. We're a party that we don't ever want to put someone on the spot and force them to. Mm-hmm. I admit Val sometimes would hope that Gord would share information that he got if it would be super valuable. But there would be times in our game where Gord would learn something or do a check that was with something evil and he would know more about it. And he'd just keep his cards close to his chest and not reveal. Which just makes the game fun. Yeah.
Or we would get someone that would say to us like, sorry, you can't do this because someone in your party, I'm sensing real evil from them and I can't have that. And we're just like, who in our party is even Hondo?
Hondo. He's into some weird shit.
Yeah.
We can breeze through this next part. We end up tracking down the Blackthorns. We find them in the middle of this mountain range. The spooky thing we find is they've raised an army. Egoth has also made a connection with frost giants. We get an introduction to Jarl Sovakin, the king of these frost giants, and he's got 2 sons. And for whatever reason, they seem to be working with Egoth. And then we just overhear through some sneaking in, some invisibility that, they're going to go storm Arindale. So we got to race back in army defense this year.
You guys actually snuck in, like you say, and using invisibility, get in, and you find battle plans. You find like an actual thing, physical evidence that you can kind of see the multiple points that they're aiming to hit the city. And it is a multi kind of faceted attack where they're focusing on 3 areas of the city to strike simultaneously. And so that gives you guys plenty of time to we need to shore up these 3 defensive areas. So in game terms, it gave you guys clear objectives.
The other big thing we see here just before we go is Egoth reveals he's got this terrifying looking, what was it called, Kyle?
It's just called the Black Hand.
It's
picture
this
like
gauntlet.
The Infinity Gauntlet, but like black and with like red and flame kind of like licking out the sides. A very clearly dark artifact, and basically the way he's kind of gesturing and using it as this kind of fist holding above and seeing the response of the Blackthorn army that he's raised and the frost giants now kind of serving him and following his lead. It was enough of an influence, as well as probably some history and arcana checks done to like just get a little bit more information that this is a very powerful artifact and clearly is kind of enhancing his abilities. So he's going to be even more badass than the first time we faced him when we come to fight him coming in the next couple of days.
And we later learn, that's like the evil equivalent of these relics of the Fatesworn that we kind of learn about. Mm-hmm. But now it's time to prepare the armies of Arindale. This is a very cool fight. What I really liked about this fight is, Kyle, you had also given us like little like private armies to work with our individual characters. And you kind of ran like a mini game during this big fight, almost like Risk, where it was like, okay, some of your army gets taken away. Okay, no, this time you do this. But there were specific moments in this battle just to point out that we can go through. Brawly, you had some pretty badass moments in this fight. If you want to share what you did.
Yeah, I took out a frost giant, one of the sons actually. I took one out, killed him, and then decided I was going to pull out one of his eyeballs and then wear it on my necklace. But then like didn't realize that like their eyeballs would be like that. So just
you're a dwarf too, so it'd be very
right to be like, oh hey. So I probably just used like a shrink potion on it or something like that. But yeah, I did that.
You did some damage to this white dragon that showed up. It also seemed like Egoth and those frost giants had this like ancient dragon they had kept latched up that showed up, and I think you made us necklaces from
I did. I just took like everything from that fight from a souvenir and just attached it to a necklace. Once again, having to shrink it because I am a dwarf as well. And then one of the other things I remember was very memorable was, and yes, thank you. I think you gave one to each of us with our names on it. I did.
Yeah, the teeth you did. It was nice.
Teeth,
we all have
I
one.
forgot I did that. Oh my God. I forgot I did that. So there was that. And then one of the other moments I really like that was really funny was Hondo having his team of pig men, and they weren't actually pig men, but he made them like, he'd go around being like oink oink, and then they would go oink.
He named his band of warriors the Pigmen, much to Kyle's chagrin. Why not?
For no reason.
For no reason.
And yes, they would do this weird nose thing, and Hondo would scream oink oink at them, became a rallying cry. And maybe so it's regretful that the city didn't fall, because that still lives to this day, which is unfortunate.
There's a couple of really key moments though, as Ally points out. The white dragon, this dragon in service of the frost giants, you guys fought that. That was a big opening battle, this big encounter for you guys. At this point, Raymond is and his students of the College of Whitethorn have cast this protective shield over the college and the Whitethorn Hall itself, so basically pulling him out of the battle. So it was mostly on you guys. And at the front gates, there's a battle. At the western wall, there's a battle. And in the harbor, there's a battle. And you guys kind of left the harbor battle rallied certain NPCs to focus there, while you guys focused the front gates, and then ultimately would focus on the western wall in the end. But there was a moment in the battle that as each kind of battle is kind of coming to an end, you could see that the enemies were pulling back at a certain point. And through some keen perception, you noticed one of Egoth's kind of followers, this mage, this fire genasi mage, who was a protege of Raymond Boralis. She was kind of making her way. Sindra.
Very good name.
Making her way across this bridge that connected Lower Arindale and Upper Arindale. It's called the King's Bridge. And it's this massive bridge over this chasm down into the river. And she was making her way across with some device that seemed explosive in nature. And it was one of those things where it was, if she had finished and if you had never caught her, the bridge was going to blow and it was going to separate the forces, and it was going to make your life very hard with no escape plan. Ultimately, though, you guys did manage to bring her down, and it was a very tense couple of moments in a really interesting way you guys played it out to ultimately kill her, stop that, and then focus on the battle at hand. She was
flying, and it was kill her, but also jump in the air and stop the bomb from falling and detonating. Very cinematic moment. It was just really, really well played. I think that was even theater of the mind too. This was just such a cool fight, because then the next part of this fight turns into a street fight, where I remember there's a bunch of buildings that we're fighting in. There's a big street that we're going on, and a frost giant bursts through the gates. I'll put up, I know I took an Instagram of it, so I'll put it up here now so you can see it. But I remember Brawly just rushing up to this frost giant. This is probably that moment where you're just going toe to toe with this guy. Kyle, I remember you just being pretty impressed with Brawly, just slugging it out with this guy here.
Brawly and Mary tag teamed the fuck out of a bunch of big enemies. And the two of you had a lot of great moments of just never backing down from a fight. Being very flourishing and descriptive of the massive size difference, and yet you're just such a force of rage and anger that you're just not backing down from this fight. Mary got some very key kills in just shutting down some of the of Egoth's and the Blackthorns kind of head figures, and ultimately you guys meet up with Egoth in the battle as part of his crew, and he leading the charge have made their way into the interior of the city, and the king and Colton are caught kind of surrounded, and you guys have to kind of rush in, almost literally having to rush in almost
to save them
into the battle to save them. And it's very kind of, there's no time for prep here. It's just go and we'll see how the dice roll.
Because Egoth was like soloing them too. He was like targeting them, wanted to take them down. Yeah, that was intense.
He was specifically like trying to 1v1 the king to kind of prove his worth, to prove his point. And Colton is trying to fight, and Egoth is more or less just backhanding Colton out of the way. Like he's just like a boy, like get out of here. And ultimately Colton does go down in this fight. Neveer revivifies and pulls him out of the fight, and the rest of you kind of make sure that he survives. But you jump in, and ultimately through one of you, I honestly don't remember who.
Gary, I think, said it's Hondo. Yeah, I'm getting confirmation here that it's Hondo.
Gets the final hit on Egoth. Yeah. That makes sense.
Fucking guy.
Hondo.
Probably was just picking his teeth for most of this fight. I'm
just like haphazardly throws a dagger.
I did get confirmation here. He fucked off so much of the fight from our producer in the background.
He gets the final kill.
God bless you, that Kev. God bless
you. And Egoth goes down in the fight, but it's not over yet.
We won. No, we won, Kyle. We won. We took down the big bad. Everything's great.
You know it's never over in my
It's never is a year now. What we see, we see him fall. Yeah, he falls. The little gauntlet like collapses, and we're like, oh, we did it. Can't believe it. Colton's alive. We're still alive. This is great. And then I recall just like apparating out of thin air, but levitating above Egoth's body was Throatier. We saw right from Ep 1 this tiefling who's the leader of the Revenant Vow, and he like creates this like protection barrier around the body of Egoth and himself. And that black hand. And then he more or less just gives the classic big bad speech of like, cool, this is cute. You guys think you won this little battle, but we're winning the war. I think he even says had a second seal broken there.
Yes.
And we've been rumored that there's 4 seals to be broken before really bad shit happens. I don't even know at this point if we know what the consequence is, but we know there's 4 seals.
At this point, no. At this point, it was, you guys didn't know you knew there were 4 seals. You didn't even necessarily know that this was one of them.
No.
Little hints and bits of pieces along the path that you very, very were on the periphery of like, there's something else going on here. And the Black Hand was a big part of that. But it just never fully clicked. You were just so focused, and rightfully so. There's a battle at hand. We have to protect the city, protect the people, fight for the king, make our stand. That all of this little stuff kind of just slipped through the fingers. And the Black Hand being this kind of artifact that when Egoth accomplished his goal of challenging a peaceful nation to go to war and meeting them in battle and falling, that he
killing a prince too. Like guy did work.
He did good work. He's not, he's no chump. He's pretty skilled. He ultimately became the harbinger of war and kind of didn't rise in this moment, but in his actions, Throatier claims, yes, the second seal has broke of 4 seals, and it's not over yet. And then they just kind of disappear.
Great moment. Ally, I don't know how you felt about this, but it was a great, like, the rug gets pulled out from under you and you're like, oh, no, now what?
Yeah, like, oh, no, what? You mean it's going to get harder than this? Okay.
But now came some downtime, which was nice. A time to rebuild the city and figure out what we wanted to do next. Ally, came some hard decisions for Brawly, though, because she had to figure out what she wanted to do next.
Yeah.
I know you got a note here. Yeah, do you want to talk about what happened with your family? Yeah.
So obviously I was going to go and join you guys. There was something I felt a calling that this is where I needed to be, was with you guys. Well, Gaz had passed, but Cal was still alive. So he gave me a letter. It says Alan on it. He gave me a letter.
and he hand wrote this, Cal himself.
Got it like
well, he hand typed it on a very elaborate typewriter.
He's got really, really clean penmanship. That's all.
That's right.
Very. He wrote, Alana, I'm sorry to say I write this letter both as a confession and a goodbye. Your leadership and friendship has meant more to me than you could possibly know, but I think you're heading into a fight too big for me to have your back this time. We always fought to protect the small and the weak, but the baddest thing we brought down was the time we stormed the cave of that Goblin King in Kaldur. But now we're fighting on the front lines of war, and I don't think I have it in me to stay. But leaving as a coward is hardly better than death. After Gaz fell, I thought we'd be splitting away from these new folks, but I can see you're taking to them, and you're kicking more ass than ever, and that's what you were made to do. I know that taking up with the Champions Guild or life as a merc always has the likelihood of ending in death, but if I'm going to die, I want to die defending the little guy like we started out doing. I'm heading back to Haverfeld to the Champions Guild there. If you make it out of this fight and ever want to catch up, the first round's on me. Keep fighting the good fight, Cal.
Classic Cal.
Classic Cal.
There's also part DM being like, I have too many NPCs.
This guy's not going to do that.
Let's get Cal out of the picture real quick with like fair reasoning.
Yeah.
Because Cal and Gaz were obviously part of Alana's like Champions Guild crew, and so one of them dying off, that's a great way. Get rid of one NPC. But the other was, I thought it was a good moment to like one, leave you with a connection, leave you with an ally, a friend, but ultimately to kind of let you focus on your new family, your new journey.
Val got some, and spoiler alert, Brawly, you did go with this, which is great. You chose to go with this.
And Brawly ended the campaign right there.
And Brawly was like, no, campaign over.
Bye.
For Val's little downtime here, through our leveling up, Val got, as Bard, got magical secrets. So I talked to Kyle about, I wanted to do something fun with Find Steed. So Val went into the forest and getting more of a connection with his patron, got this dire fox that he named Fern, which was like a gift from his patron who he was developing this relationship with because he was a hexblade at this point. But he also got a prop as well. Val got, it's very, very cool. My light's too hot, but that's much better. You can see this is an Elven script. I don't know how good you guys are with Elvish, but it is a wedding invitation from Val's sister Daisy to Elias. So we got a little hook to Verdancia. And I got this handwritten note from his sister that said, hey, you should come back home. So talked to the party, said, hey, you guys want to hit up Verdancia? My sister's getting married. Could be nice. A little downtime after this very intense thing. I'm sure it'll go great. Before we leave there, I'll touch on Mary quickly. Mary learned here that the Eldrazi had hired Egoth to kill her mentor years earlier. Quick little rundown on the Eldrazi there, Kyle.
So the Eldrazi are a group also known as the Titan Makers. They are kind of the shadow force behind the Zentarum, which is a well-known faction in D&D that I've kind of taken bits and pieces of and made just a kind of generic bad guy group in my world.
I totally thought you had created them, by the way. I totally thought that was an original thing.
No, the Zentarum are fully pulled from official D&D. The Eldrazi and Titan Makers are my side.
Gotcha.
That's my addition to it. The Eldrazi are this higher level group who basically make soldiers. They make like incredibly skilled and powerful assassins, soldiers, and mages to basically sell off for people to use however they wish to use them for however much coin it is worth. And most people are very evil in their uses of them. Mary's connection is she briefly trained with them in her early days before realizing this is some shady shit, and she got out of there to return to Arindale, but has always kind of known that that's something that's going on in the background, and they don't like when people leave and know their secrets, so it's always been this kind of shadowy element in the background. But when she returned to Arindale, she had this mentor named Ryan who properly actually trained her up before. And ultimately, Egoth was the one who killed her mentor before she left to go with the Eldrazi. But yeah, so it was
bad blood.
It was a bit of a kick, but some good information for her, a good little RP moment before we kind of transitioned out of Arindale into this journey south.
Neavir, the cleric, by the way, said, oh, by the way, I'm going to hang out here. I'm going to help with the rebuild. You guys go to that wedding. You do your cute little fun thing. Mm-hmm. So we go to Verdancia. Valentine reveals, hey, I actually came from kind of a rich family in Verdancia. My stepdad named Francis is this like aristocrat down there. I've got two step siblings, Rowan, who you've already met, and Daisy, who's getting married. And I also have two half siblings who are related to me, Lily and Leaf. Valentine adores those, has a good relationship with Daisy, and Rowan he just never really got along with. But Valentine always felt not really a part of the family, kind of like the black sheep. His mom had remarried Francis after Valentine's father had died and Francis's wife had died. So they kind of just joined this family, and Val never felt really comfortable there. But wanted to make sure everything was going smooth there and see his sister get married. So the Wildcards go and we travel into, what was this? The Vale Forest, but to get into Verdancia, maybe just like the edges of it?
Wasn't the Vale. The Vale is further south. This was just a forested area, still in Arindale proper. And it was on the edges of a couple of different villages, but it was just outside of Verdancia. And yeah, you guys got some spooky stuff happening.
Yeah, so Brawly, help me describe this. As we're creeping towards the border of Verdancia, we're going through this forest. We stumble across this shack, and it feels very swampy. What do you remember about this shack in the woods?
It was just spooky. Just everything about it, I think we had all sensed as well.
Yeah.
We were getting really bad vibes off it. And it was really mysterious. And we were kind of like, maybe we should keep an eye on that, or maybe come back later and, have that in the back of our mind, because that is a little weird. That's a little mysterious. Like,
we did creep towards it. I assume because Hondo forced us to. And we went towards it. And what we discovered was,
burn it down.
That's true. We probably
yes. Oh yeah.
A bit of an abandoned looking shack, but some spooky stuff. And then there was this almost like a dream catcher or wind chimes, but it was made of like sinew and bone and super sketchy. But in the middle of this thing was this eye. And I do remember the eye kind of swiveled around and kind of looked at us. That's super gross. So I think Valentine with Heartbreaker stabbed it and we just carried on our way. We might have even tried to burn it down. I don't know, but we just went on our way.
I think you half-heartedly tried, and it's like, didn't you any more than like one tinderbox?
No. So then we, on the edges of the border of Verdancia, we bed down to sleep that night. Valentine has a very spooky dream where he's back in his childhood home in Verdancia. And he's just having these weird, like shadowy visions of things that are happening there. He's hearing chanting. He ends up like running into a door, opening it up. He's in pitch black and all his friends are around him. And there's chanting the spooky stuff. I have it written down in my book, but it's something to the effect of shadow sun, let's have some fun. And all of a sudden his party are creeping towards him with knives. Kyle's describing all of this, by the way. Party's creeping towards him with knives, and then they take the knives to their own throats and they slit their throats in front of Valentine. And as they die, Valentine wakes up in a panic, feels something tight around his throat, so takes away his robes there, and he's got that eye that they had just stabbed from the shack, and it's there tied around his neck. And I think that's how you ended that game, Kyle. And it was just like, what are we walking into?
Yeah.
Anything you want to mention there? Should I just keep going with like how the rest of this played out?
It was just a lot of just little elements, and that's
was so good.
That's a key part about DMing is don't give the whole bag away. Just put little things along. Don't give answers. Just little bits and pieces, just enough to say something's here, something's here, something's here. It's creepy. There's something going on, but then almost fully drop it, because you guys make your way into the city proper. And though
the only other thing here, you described that.
At the outskirts of the city, as you're traveling through, you begin to hear more of this kind of like little bits and pieces that there have been some people who have gone missing, specifically children, a baby at one point, and some
these farmers. People. Yeah.
On the outskirts of Verdancia, it is a farming community, and then the interior of Verdancia is very like high, fancy, aristocratic kind of society. But there is still, average people still around the exterior. So you guys travel through that before entering into this lush, garden-filled, like beautiful city of Verdancia, and that's when everything kind of drops away, and it's just like, okay, now
that's fine.
Go have some fun.
We had some nice coffee. We meet up with the Fleur Wilds. We go to Valentine's estate, this really nice home by the sea. We have a shopping episode, probably get some potions, but we meet Valentine's family and everyone kind of gets to see the dynamic there. I loved this, Kyle. I felt like you did such a good job role playing the various different people in Valentine's family and how he had relationships that were different with each of them. Very coldish and standoffish with Francis, this kind of like fun sibling rivalry with Daisy, and then just like the adoration like his little siblings had for him and how much he loved his little siblings. So that all went great. I don't even know if they were offered to spend the night there, but the Wildcards all agree, no, we're going to stay in our own rooms. While we're there again, we get, I think, this hook of there's something happening in this farmer's community. Oh, I think we get a hook from Francis here. By the way, the arcane advisor in town, no one's heard from him for a while. Maybe you guys could check that out. we're the Wildcards. We'll check anything out. We go to this arcane advisor's house. It's kind of been ransacked. You do a really cool game here. Brawly, do you remember this? Do you remember like what goes down as we creep upstairs here? This is where I get swallowed by a rug, and it's just like terrifying. Like I remember getting constricted by a rug. I think like I don't even know Hondo tries to set me on fire. I just remember it being very, very bad, Kyle.
Yeah, it wasn't great for that. And like I think did you take like a good chunk of damage too from that?
Oh yeah. This is where we picked up after we finally figured it out. We got our flying carpet, which is pretty cool. Yeah. This is a funny moment. I will just say as like an we won't get too much into this, but Kyle, you just said there was some weird design on the floor of this arcane house. On the floor there's a weird design in the wood. It looks a little like faded in some areas but not in others. And as Mary just put in the chat, we could not figure out for the life of us what this thing was, and it wasn't until like 80 games later you revealed
I told you what it was, right? Like it wasn't so much a design, there was just a weird absence of shadow. Like there was something that should have been there, but it had basically essentially what it was there was a door, that like an arcane door that would arise from this point, but it would create where the sun would come in through. It created like an absence of like the burn on the floor, essentially like an absence of dust. Like it just looked very odd, but the description of it, you guys never got past the fact that I was saying like there's something there. You kept looking for something.
Had no idea what was going on. Yeah. What we did discover here, though, we decided to bed down for the night here. Find this little like childhood book in the drawer of this like former gnome who lived here, and there's a story in it about the three sisters. A very spooky like fairy tale that you would tell to children about these three sisters who had a crush on a guy, and they try to make a love potion from like a witch in the woods. It doesn't work, and instead the three sisters are kind of cursed by this woman in the woods. Very spooky ending, and just Kyle just needling the point that, hey, by the way, everything under the surface here may not be what it seems. So the next day we decide we should check out what these farmers were saying. Why are these people missing? We go around and we start talking to them. One woman is very distraught and just says she has no idea what happened to her baby. We investigate that area. Seems like maybe something happened through the window, but we do discover in the crib more of that like weird iconography of these like a wooden sinew bone-ish like doll or something in there, just very similar to that like Haggy eye. Talked to someone else, a very similar story. Their dad just disappeared in the night or something. I'm trying to figure out a plan though. And Brawly, who comes up with an actual good plan here?
Hondo.
What's Hondo's plan? Do you remember? Yeah.
His plan was he basically was like, let's stake out the night. If these things are happening and they're happening seemingly in the middle of the night, why don't we do a watch? Why don't we go into the shadows and hide in the village and like see what is doing this? And we were like,
and it's mind-blowing that Hondo comes up with
great idea. Like, okay, let's do that.
Seemingly obvious, but it's when Hondo says it, it just has a beauty to it.
Yeah, Kev plays his character Hondo, very chaotic, loves feeding into the magic of the chaos, but is a really brilliant tactician outside of the game. And that's when some of those like smart. That Hondo stuff kind of seeped in there. Yeah. So we stake this out. We position ourselves all around this like main road that leads into Verdancia that kind of weaves its way through these farmers' fields. Remember being with Fern in this field and we're talking on our earrings. I think Hondo might be on the rooftop of one of these houses. Brawly somewhere else, Gord somewhere else. Gord might have been flying around actually.
Specifically kind of separated yourselves to kind of keep as wide a viewpoint as you could.
So Kyle, why don't you describe what happens next? It's twilight, it's pretty late. We're not seeing anything just yet.
Deep into the night, faint fog along the ground, all the keys of something about to go wrong. And as I pointed out, you guys are separated quite extensively, more so than you would typically if you were about to go into a battle or something like that. But perfect for when you're trying to keep as wide a perspective as you can on this area, because it is a pretty large area. However, coming through the main gates of the city, Val spotted somebody.
Little girl.
Two figures, one smaller and one average size, making their way down at an odd time of night, seemingly out of place. And a little bit closer inspection revealed that you recognize that little figure as Lily.
So I start booking it. I think even Mary maybe spots it. She's just like, that's your sister. And Val jumps on Fern and we start gunning it towards them because I'm like, what the hell is happening? As I get closer, I realize that woman beside her is the woman who lost her child, who we'd interviewed before. Running and running and running. Kyle's doing such a good job raising the tension, explaining as you get closer, this woman turns to look right at you and her face just twists and contorts into this impossible wide smile. And then just like, both of them like fade away into mist. I don't even know if you ended it there, but one of these moments where I just cherish because
we did not end it there specifically because what I love about this point and what influenced the next whole arc here, this like continued adventure with this element of Lily. This, how old is Lily? Like 6 at the this is like a very young girl being taken and disappearing before your eyes. Valentine took on this intense like need to finish, to solve this, to protect, to do this, and it was a like no holds barred. I don't give a fuck about consequences. We're running, we're gunning, we're doing it now. And you weren't necessarily like, you weren't super cautious before, but you thought things out. You talked things out a lot. This was no, fuck it, my way or we do it now. And to the party's credit, you guys all followed suit and made some very interesting, awesome decisions, especially for a DM.
Yeah. Book it home. Val books it home. Dimension doors in, blows his only 4th level spell at this point, wakes up the whole house with like a thunderclap. Wanted to see if Lily was actually gone, if that was an illusion. Rushed to her room. Again, one of these creepy looking sinewy dolls is there instead. Where have we seen that before? In the shack. I think we have the tiniest conversation of, guys, we've been up all night. We've used some spells and stuff for the stakeout. That was like, fuck it, I'm going. We have to go. So we run it still all night trying to get to the shack in the woods. Find the shack, realize it goes down into like a deeper pit, into like a subterranean. That was it, the well. Then there's a subterranean cave system beneath. We end up fighting with these hags. We find them. We also find the remains of that arcane advisor who has been experimented on, mutilated, not good. We have a fight with these hags. One of them rushes to this portal and escapes with Lily, grabs her and runs into this portal. We finish off just one of the hags. 2 of them made it through, I think. And Val has this moment where he just says, hey, I have to do this. I'm sorry, but I got to keep going. If you guys, this is my sister. It's not your family. If you guys want to stay, I would totally understand. But of course, Brawly, what do the wild cards say?
We were like, no, we do this together. We're family.
Was there ever a moment in Ally or Brawly like that you're like, this is a bad idea, we shouldn't do this? Or were you just like, I get it, let's do it?
She kind of always like, it wasn't always her first choice, but because she had grown so attached to everyone, and like also Val, there was something about Val that like she just was like, I'm going to just follow you to the ends of the earth. I don't know why, but I'm there. So to her it was like without question. And of course his sister. So at that moment she was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's find your sister. Let's get her.
Yeah, you guys.
So Kyle, we jumped through this. Yeah, we jumped through this portal, and then what happens? Describe where we end up.
Find yourselves in gray, dark, dreary Shadowfell. You guys make your way into this. The portal takes you into a graveyard, and that begins a series of kind of encounters and creepy vignettes of the Shadowfell, because the Shadowfell is a great place just to pull the creepiest, the most demented stuff, including finding one of those hags who made it through that portal, hanging from a tree by a noose with a sign around her neck. I'm sure, Val, you remember what that said.
It said, "Welcome home, Shadow Son."
That's right.
And Lily was there beneath the tree as well, alive, but completely like vacant, like almost like dead behind the eyes, just numb. Yeah. So they knew something was still wrong. And they saw a city in the distance, almost like the mere shadowy version of Verdancia. So they headed towards that. Just to pause on there, something really cool, Kyle, I loved as a DM, is when we all got to the Shadowfell, you made us roll mysterious D10s maybe. And
it was a save. And on a
yes.
failed save, you had an effect, which was a D10 roll to see what the effect was.
So, Brawly, what did you get? Because I know you got one that was like, oh, fuck.
Yes, I failed. And I all of a sudden was afraid of everything. I was stricken with not fear.
It was like despair.
Despair. Yeah. So everything all of a sudden was like, what's going on? What's happening? What are we doing? Why are we here? Oh my God, am I okay? Why are we here? What is this? What's going on? Are we going to die? Oh my God, we're going to die here. Like just every little thing. And like, was like that the entire time.
Yeah, it was a rough one, but I like the fact that like you played it up really well, and everyone played it, if anyone who did have one of these effects played it up really well, and we had a lot of things that were very easy just to play into, like, yeah, that's spooky as fuck this. But I liked when we got into a battle and you hit a rage, it was like almost suppressing that, because you're just like, I got to focus on protecting this new family. And ultimately we make our way through this city, this mirror of Verdancia, and you kind of stash this empty husk of Lily at this Temple of the Raven Queen, and there's some weirdness there. But you make your way up to where you believe would be like Valentine's family's kind of manor house in the real world, and you find a kind of mirror version in this Shadowfell.
Because I believe the Temple of the Raven Queen priest revealed, oh, this girl doesn't have her soul anymore. Someone has taken her soul from her body. And we just knew, just like you said, this is going down. I've had these dreams. It all takes place in the shadowy version of my manor house. So we had there. And through these dreams, there had kept coming up this symbol of this fountain in the Valentine, or in the Florwell backyard, the courtyard, that was bubbling with like this like inky black. So we end up going there and realize that's a portal to somewhere else. So we like kind of like dunk ourselves in there, and then boom, whoosh, get taken somewhere else to this. I believe actually we were met very kindly by, was the Mind Flare servant, the guy who let us in here?
Out of the gate, introduce you guys to a Mind Flayer who like brings you into,
very kindly, very welcoming. Yeah,
surprisingly so, although it is a weird kind of telepathic conversation, but brings you into this banquet hall, and it's this long, large like family dining table full of feast food. There's roaring like fireplaces with fires. It's lavishly, if not gaudily, decorated, and seated at the table is a rather handsome gentleman none of you recognize, though very quickly introduces himself as Asriel and as Valentine's true father.
Quick out of game, Kyle and I, when we were deciding on Val, my whole idea of a character was it'd be cool to play like a half hag. So instead of a half elf, play like a half hag. And this idea that we always hear about female hags, and they're always like grotesque, but they always have these like seductive powers, and they can like woo people towards them and manipulate them. What if there was like a male equivalent that like had even more of a facade of like beauty on top, but were just as deadly, if not more so? And what if that was like Valentine's father? So kind of just like gave Kyle these like, oh, and maybe that was like his father, and then somehow bounded up with his other family. Verdancia is a cool sounding name. It's kind of French sounding. Fleur Wild could be taken from wild, blah, blah, blah. And then Kyle crafted this like whole thing to meet in this moment of, holy shit, there's Asriel. And Asriel basically just says the classic, like, oh yeah, I got your sister's soul and I'll easily give it to you. You just have to give me your soul in return. Before Valentine had moved to this spot where he was now, he had like one final almost like message from his patron, just being like, if you make the right choices, if you like stay with the light, if you trust yourself and your friends, like things will be okay. But anyways, in this moment, there's like a mind flare. There's this guy who's clearly like a half hag, super powerful guy. We can see other people like moving around. There's like a scary looking dark dwarf. And yeah, he's just pretty much like, so what's it going to be? Are you going to join me, or are we going to throw down?
A battle of wits and wills, pokes and prods from either side, and the constant roundabout talk of deals of Lily's soul and the fate of Valentine, all hanging on the line, while zombified ogres, a dark dwarf, and the Illithid watch silently and in wait.
And I remember being very torn because I didn't know what to do, because I didn't want my friends to die. So I was so close to saying yes, being like, let's do it. And Mary behind me keeps being like, and Brawly keeps being like, you can't do this. Like, don't do this. So I give this big speech about family. Val gives this big speech about, I've never known what my true family is. I've always gone by so many different names, Fleur Wild, all my like bullshit pseudonyms. But the one thing that really stuck out for me was the name Heartbreaker. So then I like whip out the light blade or the sun sword Heartbreaker and try and stab Asriel. And that's where I think we ended that game. It was just like, okay, stop here. Next game we pick up, let's fight.
And the next game was pretty much that full fight. Like, it was a long, grueling fight, which had some of our best swings in highs and lows. Asriel focusing pretty much purely on you.
And kicking my ass. I've said this before, I have all of this on my phone as an audio note. If we raise $100,000 tonight, I will release it. That is the mark. But yeah, like this fight, one of my favorite moments in this fight, just early on, I wanted to play it true to what Valentine would do. So instead of being on the perimeter just healing people, I was just trying to 1v1 Asriel, again getting my ass handed to me. And I remember it was like 3 hits that Val took, and he was just so low already, way below half. And instead of like hitting me again, you instead just played Asriel as like looking at me and being like, this is it, this is all you have, like so disappointing or like so pathetic.
What do you have to say for yourself? And he just slaps you.
Oh, that's the worst blow we could have done. And then you just backhanded me for like one HP off my like score. And it was, I was just such a good DM moment, because I was like, that hurt more than any sword blow could. Like, what a wound to Val's pride. I just loved it. In this fight, Brawly, I think you were turned into like a cow or something.
I was turned into a chicken.
A chicken, that's right. You were
and
polymorphed.
I didn't know how to get out of it, so I think I bashed into Mary or something like that.
Did you
I ran
yourself
into
at the fire?
I threw myself at the fire. That's it. Yeah, it was later on. I bashed myself into Mary in another later on. But one of the other things I loved about this fight as well is Hondo.
Oh yeah,
the mind player.
It's always Hondo.
It's always.
I want
Hondo.
you to explain this, Brawly, but I will say.
Okay.
We had this moment between our games. I think it's a 2-week break. And I've talked about this before, but I remember this one Critical Role fight for Grog. It's like a Goliath fight. They seemed to have a plan that they had worked out, a very intricate plan. So I remember pulling the wild cards together in a little message thread and being like, guys, we need to come up with a plan or else we're going to get our asses kicked. So we kind of came up with a plan. This is what we could do. This is it. And Kevin Hondo in that chat was like, don't worry, guys. I have a plan of my own. And so what did he do? Right off the top, I think he gets the first move. What did he try and do? Brawly?
Right off the top, he rolled initiative. He got first, and he goes up to the my player and is like, how about we ditch these guys? You and me. Let's join forces. Come on. You're an intellectual being. I'm an intellectual being. Let's combine our mind powers together. So then the mind player is like, all right, goes up to him and just sucks on his brain.
Yeah. Kyle grapples him. Gets the brain suck going on. Yeah.
I mean, what's
bless your heart
to do?
Yeah, bless your heart. I think you even let Kevin do a persuasion check. Like,
of course I'm gonna
try.
Let him try. It didn't matter really what he rolled, but
on this being that reads minds.
Yeah.
So in this fight, also Mary gets banished. I think it was Asriel or some caster, maybe even this mind player, Varak, banishes her. She disappears. Kyle, why don't you say like the cool thing here, just with the banishment and how that works?
The way like banishment works, by my understanding, is when you're banished, you return to your home plane. So if you banish, a devil, it goes back to the hells. But if you banish like a regular person, if you're not on the material plane, they go back to the material plane, presumably. So because this was an echo of the material plane, and they're in this kind of like place in Valentine's home, I had Mary basically banish back to the real world, back to the real manor house, and Mary just like calls out for aid, just like anybody who's there.
Help!
And Daisy and Elias managed to kind of catch wind of some of this. I don't even remember if it was a direct conversation or if they just kind of heard Mary screaming, and she put enough information in the round or two that she was banished that she was able to kind of get them to come. And ultimately, they followed through and came, and at the very end of this battle, they came in and came to your aid and came to help you guys escape. But there's like a bit of time dilation. So like as that happened while you were in the Shadowfell, it was taking way longer than outside. So because it was this weird time mess where like they were able to like be right there, right at the end. But the battle was not over when Mary came back.
Yeah, so in this fight, Val again is getting his ass kicked and pretty much goes right down to zero, pretty much just dies, falls at Asriel's feet. And I remember he like pretty much just punts me into that fireplace. And Kyle, you just very elegantly describe, your consciousness is leaving your body, like the light is leaving you, but you do hear this voice, and it's the Summer Queen. And she says, like, I don't even know what you said. You stayed true to your oath. You didn't give in to the darkness. And as a result, like, my chosen rise once more. And I like come back up at like 1 HP and like, I honestly thought I was dead. I remember leaning back from the table, just being like, wow. Well, I remember leaning back and saying to myself in my own head, you gave it your all. Like, that's what you would have done. That was like the noble thing to do. You weren't a coward. You fought this well. You can die happy. And then I popped back up and the fight started to turn there. I admit this fight was like one of our most seesaw ones, but I remember again, a very proud moment as Mary comes back, this fight starts to turn and we all end up in this like classic like Avengers line on one side of the room with this table kicked over, but it's like Gord, Hondo, Brawly, Mary, Val, we're all there. We're all ready. Elias and Daisy show up, and getting the killing blow on Asriel is Mary stabbing him. As soon as she stabs him, that whole demi-plane starts to crumble away and we're rushing out trying to make it. And I'm just so hyped that we're alive, that we killed him. Val doesn't remember. And just to describe, Kyle, you put a little fucking, what's that called?
Hourglass
On the table. And I like, when this runs out, everything collapses on you. So we're rushing out trying to escape. And Mary remembers we have to get that soul or else we're screwed. Like this little bead for Daisy. And as this thing's collapsing around us, she reaches for Asriel. You make her roll a D20. And Dice Gods, you're always looking out for us. She rolls a D20, or she rolls a nat 20.
Yeah.
Grabs that little bead, and we escape through that portal back into the Shadowfell. We've actually survived. And then, long story short, get Daisy back, give her soul. She's starting to come back to life. We start to escape the Shadowfell. There's a little trickery here where Gord gets a little voice from Orcus who's like, hey, I hate the Raven Queen priests. Why don't you sacrifice one of them to me to prove your worth and to get more power? So just before we escape from the Shadowfell, Gord's like, I'll go last with this guide from the Raven Queen temple. And then just straight up slits her throat and comes back. And Brawly like appears covered in blood. And we're like, holy shit, are you okay, Gord? Totally fine.
And it was so intense because like we did not know what he was up to. Like, I think even in like a player sense, we didn't know 100% what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all trying to jump out and this timer's going. We're like, go, 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 go. And I remember we were all like, even telling Brock, we were like, go, 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 go. And then he did, and he made it out. It was like, it was so intense.
Some of the small things that I miss about like an in-person like home game is one, the props that like sending, like giving you guys little props, super fun. But having the ability, although you can, obviously we've done it, you can just message someone quietly off to the side, but there's just something about like going over and pulling someone aside away from the main table and having a little like 1v1 whisper moment of like, Orcus telling you like, yo, kill this Raven Queen person and
do this shit.
Why not? And then
one last
that happen.
One last note, that Mind Flayer Varrock, in that fight, he started to see, oh shit, this is not going well. So he just pieced. He plane shifted out of there before the tower collapsed. And we just kind of like tracked that.
One other last note before, as you guys do escape the demi-plane and you return to the shadow version of your manor home with Daisy, Elias, and your group, before you go and get Lily even, that demi-plane and that kind of fountain that you entered through begins to solidify and becomes one of those gate gems, one of the gate gems similar to that you grabbed in the Isle of the Faceless in our early sessions with Syrah. And so you took that along with you as well as this kind of just keeping that little thread of like, these are still in the world and these are escaping your understanding, but they're obviously very, very powerful and connected to something otherworldly. So to keep that thread kind of running through.
And then everything was fine. We ended up back in the material plane. Lily's okay. And we got to see Daisy marry Elias in this really nice, again, beautifully narrated moment. Like while the sun's setting, witness, again, fancy dress wedding. Give your players a chance to dress up. But yeah,
good times.
Beautiful little change of pace to slow it down and have a moment of gratitude. And that is where we're going to end this recap. But Brawly, quick look ahead to what's happening in our next couple sessions. What are some places you recall, not to give things away, but some fun places we've entered to?
I just remember one being really hot and really uncomfortable. We were there really for a while.
We've entered to two places that are no fun. One is very hot with flames, and the other is the scariest place. The scariest sessions I've ever been a part of. Just constant fear and how the fuck are we going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Super fun as a DM, though.
So look forward to those. That's in recap 3, and we will be joined by a special guest. His name might be Hondo the Blue, to help us narrate those. Mm-hmm. But thank you if you made it this far for watching. If you have any questions about anything that we've said, you want us to elaborate on something or to explain anything else, please just leave them down there in the comments below, and we'd be happy to answer them. And that's all for us. Kyle, where can they watch our new games, which are still coming out as we record this video?
Yeah, we're still producing more videos, more streams. Check them out on Tuesday at Hexplorers, and these videos will be coming out shortly. We have one more of these recap videos to come, as Scott said, with Hondo the Blue in tow. But check us out here Tuesdays for new episodes.
Yeah, and then we'll be all caught up. So will you. You'll be all caught up, and you can start watching right from episode 1. That's all for us tonight. Thank you so much for watching this. We love you. Thanks for watching, and I'll steal your line, Kyle. Keep exploring.